Hi, it's Dr. Lori, the Ph.D. Antiques Appraiser, and today I want to talk with you about souvenir shopping. So one of the things that you might notice if you're shopping at the flea market, the yard sale, the thrift store, is that a lot of the objects that are there are actually souvenirs. A lot of people will give away souvenirs not knowing that they can have value. So I want to talk to you about what you should shop for when you're souvenir shopping. Here we go. First of all, shop for wherever you go, wherever the heck you go, I don't care, near or far. If you are going to get a souvenir, I want you to get something that is representative of the place. So there's a reason why we all go to, insert place here. The reason why we all go to, the beach. The reason why we all go to Mount Rushmore. The reason why we all go to whatever. And what is important about that place, that's what the souvenir should be. Those are the ones that hold their value. Those are the ones that are interesting to people. So starting at the beginning, the first souvenirs are actually seashells. Everybody would collect seashells. You all did it with your kids. Maybe you did it as a kid. But basically, seashells are some of the first collectibles that you'll collect seashells and you'll basically have them. What you may not know is that in the South Pacific, in places like Fiji and the islands, you actually, the same way you're going to get a lei around your neck if you go to Hawaii of flowers, in those areas like Fiji, you're going to get seashells. And seashells are actually a little necklace that they're going to give you. Not really worth all that much, but because of the abundance of shells in places like Fiji, you actually will be able to get these kinds of pieces and they'll put them over your neck when you arrive. It's really kind of wonderful and it's really exciting, and it does give for a great, of course, keepsake. Different types of shells, usually cowrie shells like this shell. Those shells are cowrie shells, are very, very typical. You usually see cowrie shells, of course, in places like Africa as well. So the seashells are the first collectible, and a lot of people will in fact utilize seashells like this. So when I was in Fiji, I remember I laughed and laughed and laughed when the gentleman, when I got off, I was on a ship. When I got off the ship, I laughed and laughed and laughed because he handed me a bottle of Fiji water. And I thought, well, it is Fiji. And the Fiji water was there. But what I really wanted was a necklace of course, seashells. And that's what I got. So those are some of the early collectibles. And other places in places like New Zealand and places like, of course, New Zealand and places like Australia are shells like this, big abalone shells. This particular shell, I liked shells because they have to do with collecting, and I also liked the back portion of this one, the inside of this one. I thought it was beautiful colors, and abalone, of course, is sometimes inset into bracelets, into jewelry, into barrettes. I actually bought an abalone barrette too. But this particular piece is a really nice example, and one that was not all that expensive. It was about $12, but there was a lot of conversation when I was there about, in fact, shells and the way in which shells were part of the culture. Understanding collecting when it comes to souvenirs and pieces from faraway lands has to do with this idea, again, of representing the place. So when I was in Costa Rica, Costa Rican pieces were very interested and very popular, not only about the beautiful, lush rainforests of Costa Rica, but also the idea and the interest in coffee and coffee beans and the coffee trade. So one of the places that a lot of tourists go is a place called Sarchi, and Sarchi has to do with the coffee trade, but it has to also do with getting the beans to market. And one of the ways they did that was with these very brightly colored, beautifully decorated carts. These coffee carts that, of course, right here you'd have your donkey or you'd have your mule or you'd have your horse attached to this coffee cart, or the person who actually runs the cart can actually pull the cart too. And then you'd have this area here in the cart like this one. And they could come in different colors. The red carts are usually much more desirable, but there were white carts too, like this white cart, brightly colored, typical souvenir piece, typical souvenir piece that you can see with the wheels, all wood, but of course hand painted. Really nice piece, and some of the designs relate to the place too. So the designs here that have natural designs on the side, for example, the natural designs on the side relate to that idea of nature, being one with nature. But these are pretty traditional pieces, very, very common souvenirs. Maybe they're 25 bucks for the big one and 10 bucks for the small one, but a really nice souvenir of that part of the world because coffee is so important to much of South and Central America. Speaking of South and Central America, there are pieces that are really kind of indicative of South and Central America. So, for example, some of the elements that relate to, in fact, animals, like the blue iguanas that you will see in places like Cozumel, the Mayan stronghold of Mexico. So this particular piece, and what I look for when I'm seeing these pieces, I look for pieces that are of quality. So while it might be inexpensive, I want something that's going to remind me of the place, and I want of the trip, and I want something that's going to be of quality. So the first thing I'm going to look for is I'm going to look underneath. And you know I'm going to look underneath, and I'm going to look inside. So this is a blue iguana. It's highly painted. And you're going to see a lot of that in Mexico, in Guatemala, bright colors, in places like Panama, in places like Costa Rica, and other places, Brazil. The bright colors are all about it. So you're going to see this piece, and this piece is really beautifully detailed with the flowers on top of the blue iguana. And I don't know if you remember about the blue iguanas, but the blue iguanas actually, they would actually sit there, and you can kind of look at them for a while, and they're really kind of a blue color. I saw them also in the Cayman Islands, but if you look down this particular piece of ceramic, and this is a piece of redware pottery, if you look down into the mouth, you can see the redware, and that's what I want you to look for, consistency of the color of the clay. Now you're saying, but Dr. Laura, you know, it's all been painted over. It's kind of hard to see that. But I want you to see a consistent color. If you see like dark red and light red in a terracotta or a redware clay, usually not as high quality. It might break more easily. So that piece is from Mexico. Again, maybe $10. Other parts of the Caribbean, you're probably going to see other parts of the Caribbean who also are showing you ceramics and pieces like this one. This is a piece of Wassi pottery from Jamaica. Now, Jamaica is easy in terms of the pottery pieces. Wassi is some of the most popular pottery that you're going to see there. Again, the same type of bright colors. The inside has this nice color of like saffron, that nice yellow color. And then you can see the other colors as you go all the way around this particular piece. Straightforward forms, pretty straightforward forms, and a nice base. And then, of course, having it be signed is what you want to look for too. So this is a little bit more expensive from, of course, Jamaica, but a nice piece and one that relates to Wassi pottery. Wassi pottery is known for the colors and known for, of course, these particular designs. You know, what do I look for? So if I'm in Jamaica, a piece like this I would automatically recognize, and maybe I'd associate it with the Rastafarians or Bob Marley or that kind of thing, reggae, because of the colors. And it's related to the colors of the Jamaican flag. So you can see the bright red, the bright yellow, the green, and the black relating, of course, to those colors. And the way in which people from places like Africa were there, and of course the way in which the native what would be called Americans or Central Americans or Indians are there too. You're going to see that. The yellow usually relates to the sun and such, but its culture and its climate go together, hand in hand, when you're looking at pieces from, of course, places like Jamaica. Staying in that part of the world, Panama are indicative of what's happening there and of women's work. I'm going to show you this side first before I talk about what's known as a mola. A mola is basically a piece that would be worn right in the bodice, would be worn as on clothing, and they would be hand embroidered. I showed you the back of the embroidery, and then of course the front here is really well delicately embroidered. And it's embroidered here, and it's all done by hand, and it's stitched, and usually there is an image of an animal or a bird from the rainforest, because the rainforest, of course, is so important to the culture. So you're seeing this, and these pieces are very inexpensive, nice to pick up. Some people will take them home and frame them. I've had a lot of people, a lot of you, say to me, Dr. Lori, I don't know what this is, but I saw it in a thrift store. It was in a frame, and it looks like a textile, and I don't know what it is. Is it valuable? And those framed mola pieces can be pretty valuable. There's this one, which of course is one of the birds with some flowers, and this one over here is a little bit more specific, a little bit more decorative and detailed. So what do I look for when I'm looking for these things? I'm going to show it to you here. What I look for is look at the back first, right? Look at the stitchery. See if the stitches are close together. They probably won't be. These are done pretty quickly. And then on this side, look at the way in which they're hiding the stitches. So like here around the red, they're hiding the stitches. You can't see those red stitches there. So those particular pieces, all hand done, not done by machine. And then you're also seeing the way in which you're focusing on of course, the birds, or you're focusing on the flowers, or you're focusing on leaves, or something that relates to, again, that wonderful rainforest. So a really good example is this example. So if you had to choose which one, you'd probably choose the bigger one, be more expensive. And the bigger one also would be, of course, a little bit more decorative and styled. I'm just going to put that right back there like that. So that's what you're looking at there. Other pieces that you want to look for when you're in places like Costa Rica and Guatemala and the like are, of course, pieces that relate to the Spanish tradition. So, of course, these are Spanish colonial places. So the Spanish colonies are ridden with, in fact, figures that relate to, of course, Spanish culture, like the Santos figure. This, of course, is San Francisco, or Saint Francis, and this particular piece is a Santos figure. They are carved figures of saints, and they're usually in wood, brightly colored and painted, and they relate to, of course, the way these particular saints looked. So an example here is, of course, Saint Francis. He oftentimes is shown as a bald man. Remember, Saint Francis is the saint that accepts all of the animals and, of course, is very good to the earth, that kind of thing. You're looking at this particular Santos, and he, of course, is one of many. So you could have selected a Santos or a saint figure, hand-carved in a place like Guatemala, and maybe you selected the Virgin Mary or Christ or one of the saints, or Saint Agatha, who cut off her breast, or Saint Lucy, who gouged out her eyes, or whoever your patron saint might be, Saint Barbara or Saint Catherine, whoever it is. And this particular piece is Saint Francis or San Francisco. And I actually recall getting this particular piece and thinking, oh, this should be very, very expensive, and it wasn't. This particular piece is one that is oftentimes these Santos figures are sold in the big areas, in the big arenas that are actually held up, where you can go and there are all these little stalls of hand-carved crafts are made, and you can go in and shop in those particular places. So pretty cool. The other thing that is known for, of course, a place like Panama, and a lot of people will collect Christmas ornaments. Christmas ornaments, or any kind of ornaments, or anything that will hang. In Panama, they take this gourd and they basically take out the middle, and then they put a butterfly image or a flower image. On this side there's, of course, the butterfly. On this side there's the thistle image, or the flower image. You're going to see it here, and the butterfly here on this gourd. And then they just put an inexpensive little piece of ribbon or a piece of string, so you can hang it as a souvenir, like a Christmas ornament or a holiday ornament. So ornamentation in these kinds of pieces relate to nature. You're going to see a lot of that in places like the Caribbean and such. But in other parts of the world, you might be surprised to learn that natural items are still important, pieces like this one. This is a beautiful piece and pretty expensive as well as a souvenir. This little basket is a basket made of natural grasses, and this basket is, of course, a basket that was from Kodiak, Alaska. You can see that it has some embellishments at the top of caribou and bone, so the caribou actual fur, and then the bone, and then the grasses are what makes the actual basket. It's woven. Now, a lot of the Native American or Pacific Northwest coastal Native Americans will actually use these grasses to, in fact, weave. And here's what I want you to see. I want you to look for that concentric circle that starts the weaving of the basket and then is continued all the way around. So you can see the way in which this particular piece is started and is really, really specific of how the weaving starts and then is continued all the way around. The lid also opens, and they usually have a little card, that they tell you where it's from and how much you paid and what the shop was, kind of thing. You should keep those. You should also always look for that native seal that says it was made by a Native American. It's important that you maintain that. I love fish, so of course I chose the one with fish. And this particular piece, a little bit more expensive, but this particular piece is a Native American piece. It's contemporary, and it's a woven grass basket. Look for concentric weaving, like concentric circles, and then also look for either small or very large. The larger the baskets get, the more expensive. So this piece is worth about $100, but very beautiful, and of course indicative of what we see in places like Alaska. One more point about Alaska. The other things that you might see in Alaska are things that relate to totem poles. So this particular piece is another one of those ornaments, but it relates to totem poles. And this particular one is called form line art. It's that heavy outline that you usually see of the native coastal Native Americans or the native coastal Indians. where these people, the first indigenous people of North America, will in fact make these pieces that relate to the animals that were important, the animals that relate to, of course, their culture and of course their mythology. Animals like beavers, animals like thunderbirds, animals like bears and such. You'll also see salmon, of course, an important animal there too. So you're going to see these kinds of things with that heavy outline. You know, it's kind of like the same artwork that you're going to see on the Seattle Seahawks football team, you know, logos. And you're going to see them there. It comes out of course, the Northwest coastal Tlingit and the coastal Salish, those, of course, peoples or tribes that you're going to see. So beautiful, wonderful pieces that you want to pick up because it relates to what you're seeing all over the place. When you go to places like Sitka, Alaska, and you see the great totem poles, you would see forms that look a whole lot like this. When you're looking for, of course, souvenir shopping, or if you're looking at pieces that are from somewhere far away, you want to make sure that you're looking at pieces that in fact relate to the place. So try not to get something that isn't indicative of the place when you're souvenir shopping. And I'm Dr. Lori to teach you a little bit more about culture and souvenir shopping. Think about how much you're spending. Remember to stick to your budget, but again, it will be a great keepsake of a wonderful trip. I'm Dr. Lori, the Ph.D. Antiques Appraiser. See you next time.